welcome to Money in Motion. Today I want to talk about the Super Committee in Congress and possible outcomes and implications. I want to talk a little bit about the last piece of legislation that we tried to pass in the Congress, which was the jobs bill, which the president desperately said he needed. They wanted to pass it now was the cry of the president. I want to talk a little bit about that and how it may influence what's going to happen from the Super Committee. As you may recall, that particular bill was a job stimulus bill, which was about $450 billion. And the president said, and I quote, "This will not cost anything. It won't add to the deficit because the tax on the millionaires and billionaires will help pay for it." Now, at the same time, the president was talking about it's not going to cost any additional tax dollars for the general public. Senator Harry Reid, the majority leader in the Senate, was saying that we're only going to increase the price of taxes to the millionaires and billionaires about 5.3%. That's a little bit of a shenanigan on the part of Senator Reid, because if you walked into a store and saw an item that was priced $100, and a week later you walked in and the price was $105, you would equate that to being a 5% increase. Senator Reid is characterizing the increase to pay for the job stimulus bill as a 5.3% increase. Well, in reality, it's not that. It's a 5.3 increment added to the 29 maximum tax rate, which means the new tax rate would be 34.3%. Now, that's actually an 18% increase in taxes on the, quote, millionaires and billionaires, not a 5%. So that's a little trick that Senator Reid is trying to convince us that it's not that big a deal. 18% increase in taxes is a big deal. But I want to point out one other thing which wasn't really talked about much. The stimulus bill was a one-year bill for $450 billion. And the president said that it was going to be paid for by an increase in taxes on the millionaires and billionaires. That's $450 billion of incremental taxes, not for 1 year, because the legislation didn't propose changing the tax rates for 1 year to pay for the one-year stimulus. The legislation proposed raising the tax rate for basically forever. So if I look over the next 10 years at $450 billion of additional taxes, the first $450 billion is going to be used to pay for what was purported to be a job stimulus program. The balance of it, almost $4 trillion, meaning 450 times 9 years, $4 trillion. Nobody seems to know what's going to happen to that incremental money. Are we going to use it to reduce the deficit? Are we going to find new ways to spend an incremental $4 trillion? Nobody knows for sure. I'm reminded of what Nancy Pelosi said when they passed the health care bill. Well, we have to pass it to see what's in it. Do we have to pass the president's job stimulus bill or any variation thereof before we find out what's in it? Now, moving to the Super Committee, made up of the Democrats and the Republicans in equal shares, senators and congressmen, they have a mandate. They've got to come up with a solution of how to save $1.2 to $1.5 trillion in budget cuts over the next 10 years. Now, that $1.2 to $1.5 trillion doesn't necessarily always have to come in the form of tax increases or budget cuts or both. My guess is that the Democrats are going to want to have at least 50% of the $1.2 trillion or $600 to $700 billion come from incremental revenue, and the rest in some kind of budget cuts. Again, shenanigans. Since the president has declared that the war in Iraq is over and we're bringing the troops home, the Democrats will want to credit against that $1.2 trillion for, quote, the supposed save money for ending of the war. So if that's their plan, there's not going to be any real budget cuts. We're going to continue to spend at incredible amounts. And at the same time, we're going to try and increase taxes by $1.2 trillion. It seems to me that we are seeing a clear, defined difference between the Democratic approach and the Republican approach to solving the budget deficit. The Democrats want to increase taxes on the rich, they say, but ultimately they're going to raise taxes on all of us. The Democrats want to do this immediately. Any budget cuts that are going to go in are not going to go into effect until 2013, after the presidential election. I also think that's a little questionable. My concern is that the super committee doesn't come to an agreement in late November, and we repeat August all over again. This time we may see Fitch and Moody's downgrade the credit rating of the long-term debt of the United States to AA. These are going to be very interesting times over the next couple of weeks. The markets are still focusing on Greece. Now this morning they're looking at the possibility of Italy. Then we've got Spain and Portugal. So there's a never-ending story of countries that are in deep debt that they're looking for bailouts. And these are typically economies in Europe that are socialist-based, where they provide everything for people. We would be well served to look at what has happened to those countries in a tax and spend mode to provide hundreds of billions of dollars of benefits that we can't pay. So watch what's happening over the next couple of weeks, and it could be very interesting. As I've said to you in my quarterly reports, I expect the volatility to continue for some time, perhaps well into 2012. So that's it for now. If you have questions, please feel free to give me a call or send me an email. Thanks for watching.